Hello, EFR 515 students. This chapter, we're dealing with exercise 5 from chapter 5, or z-scores. Z-scores are very important for us because they change the location. Specifically, they change the mean and standard deviation of the data. So what we're doing is taking the raw scores, whatever they're measured in, and mapping it into a different distribution, which is the standard normal distribution. And we need to feel very comfortable with z-scores. In education, we'll see t-scores and other scores that are based off this distribution. So it's also very important, the concept of what a z-score does for us. It doesn't change the location, but it just changes the scale for us. So in the assignment, I say enter the below data into SPSS and calculate the mean and standard deviation using these values and the transform function in SPSS. Calculate the z-score for each observation. After you have created the z-score, calculate their mean and standard deviation. Okay, so we have our data here, so we'll go ahead and open up our SPSS, and just like we've done before, we'll enter our data. So our raw scale is X here in the observation. So we'll go to variable view, we'll come up here and label our data. It's just X. And then we'll go ahead to data view and enter our data, which is 3, 7, 2, 4, 2, 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so the first thing I ask you to do is calculate the mean and standard deviations of these observations. So for that, we come up to Analyze, Descriptives, Descriptives. We've done this before in previous assignments. Our variable here, X, and again we can see it's a numeric. It's got a little measuring stick here. We'll bump it over into variables. Go ahead and look at our options. And all we need is the mean and the standard deviation. So just the mean and standard deviation. Click continue. And then we'll go ahead and paste that. Because it's the first time we're using our Sentex window, we automatically move over to Sentex. Once it's open, I have to go down to the tabs function and click my way over there. So now we'll go ahead and run this. So I'm going to hit left mouse and drag across this. I'm going to go up to the green triangle, hit run selection. And we've got our mean and our standard deviation. Okay, so if we go back to our assignment, what I asked you to do then is calculate the mean and standard deviation using these values, and the transform function in SPSS calculate the z-scores from those. And we see in our text how to do that. For example, on page 143, example 5.2, we'll get a z-score out by taking x minus the mean divided by the standard deviation. Now, we don't have population values, we have sample values, but we'll go ahead and use those. So I'm going to go back to my SPSS. I'm going to come up to Transform, Compute Variables, and my window here is going to open up in order to put in that mathematical function. Our score coming out is going to be a z-score, and the numerical expression then, as we look here, is X, our observation, so that's right down here. And one thing I see here, I don't see the ruler here anymore. And I'm kind of curious why. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna take my X, and it's X minus the mean. So I'm gonna put a parenthesis first. Oops, I'm gonna go up here and I'm gonna put an open parenthesis. I'm gonna click on my X, and then I'm gonna minus the mean, and our mean in this case, we'll have to go back to the output here. I'm just going to copy it over to Word so I can see that. So our mean, where did my table go? I guess I lost my table, so I'm going to get it back here. Here it is. Okay, so we have the z, the target value. We have open parenthesis, x minus, and what our mean value here is 3. couple zeros in there, divided by, it's just backslash, and then the standard deviation, which our value is 1.85164, for example. Okay, so our expression's in there. We'll go ahead and hit paste. And now we have to go back to our syntax window. Okay, and right up here we see that it says compute z equals x minus 3, which is the mean, divided by the standard deviation, which in our case is 1.85164. So we can go ahead and block that. Again, I'm hitting my left mouse and dragging across it. I'm going to go click the green triangle, and it says compute that. Now we don't get anything else in our output window here. So we'll go ahead and go to our data window, and we see that we have a new variable here, which is the z-scores. Okay. So now let's go ahead and take the mean and the standard deviation of these. So I'll go Analyze, Descriptives, Descriptives again, and now z's over here as well, so I'll bump that over with my x's. I'll paste that. No, I'm going to check my options. The mean and standard deviation is checked. Continue. Paste it. Now, as I go to my syntax window, I press my left mouse, I drag across that, I hit my green triangle to run it. And then as we see here, what we get out of that is the mean of the raw scores or the x scores was 3, but the mean of the z values is 0. The standard deviation of the raw scores or x scores was 1.85164, and what we see here underneath there is the standard deviation being 1. Now, just quickly, if I go look at this data up here, what if I go up to Graphs, Legacy, Histogram, and I can bump over X here. I'll display normal curve, paste, and then I'm going to do the same thing one more time. Graphs, Legacy, Histogram, and then I'm going to move back my X. I just click on it and bumped it over, and I'll put in my Z's, displaying the histogram, paste. I'll go to my syntax window, and I'll run those two graphs. So I block them, I hit the green button, and we'll get two histograms here. Okay, and as you can see here, they're identically shaped. So why don't I go ahead and I'll bring this table over. So I'm going to copy the means and standard deviations. I'm going to bring it into my Word document. Get rid of the previous table. I'll go ahead and paste it in there. Okay, and I didn't ask you to do the graphs, but I just want to show you what these graphs look like. So we'll go ahead and copy that first graph. Just going to paste it in here. It should come right in. Also going to shrink it. I'll paste it in as a JPEG. Again, you don't have to bring this over, but I'm going to show you. So now I'm going to go get this was the value for the X, and now I'm going to go ahead and get the value, the graph for the Z's. And to get this in here so I can resize it, I need to bring it in as a JPEG. It just works better for resizing. Okay, so as we can see up here, now I have the two graphs, the histograms, side by side. So this is our raw score X here, as we can see our X, and these are the z-scores, or our standard normal scores. Now the shape of the distribution has not changed. The only thing that's changed is we've mapped the x scale into a z-scale. Consequently, the mean, for example, of the x raw scores was 3, and now the standard deviation was 1.852. When we look at our z-scores, the mean is 0, and the standard deviation is 1.000. So a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. This will be very convenient for us in explaining, for example, education test scores and alike as we get into the next chapter with dealing with probabilities and understanding the probabilities under graphs to help us make decisions. Now there's one more thing I want to show you here. Just like in SAS or SPSS and some of the other programs, there's other ways to calculate the z-scores than we have just done here. And if you get stuck and want to learn something about a given program, you can just go to the help function or go to the Google, for example. And I'm going to go ahead and I look to see how to calculate the z-scores using a function. And because that's something that's commonly done, it's in there. So I'm just going to paste it at the bottom of this assignment. And it tells us how to calculate those z-scores. Now we have to do it with syntax, and it shows us an example here. So in our case, our example would be this code right here, descriptives variables x to zx. And I'm going to go ahead and run that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to bring it over into the syntax window. Paste it in there. Okay, so our variable, our raw score variable, I'll use the capital letter x, and then I'm going to say x, and then it's going to be the z of x here. So this is just one line of code that's going to go ahead and calculate a new set for us as we go back to the data. Now we see we have z of x. And with some rounding error, it's the same exact data set that we have. For example, analyze, descriptives, and we can bring over z of x as well. I'll go ahead, our options here are mean and standard deviation, and I'll paste that in. And now I'm going to go to my syntax window and run that. And as you can see, we get similar results than we did before. So this is just a function within SPSS that's a little quicker and more to the point than what we did in the assignment. So what I want you to do then, what I want to see in your calculation is this table right here and the syntax that was associated with that. I'm going to go ahead and put this bottom table down here. So I got to go back to my syntax, and I had calculated the values here. Descriptive variables xz means that's the key aspect, and then the compute. So I'll go ahead and take these 3 lines of code, copy these, and this is the syntax that I'm interested in the assignment. So it's the first descriptives, which gave me the mean and standard deviation, the computed value, and then descriptives that gave me the final double table in this assignment. Okay, so that's what I'm looking for. And go ahead and put that in the assignment. Now, your variables are different, right? Your data is different. So it's you'll need to do this on your own. So descriptives gave me the initial values. I use a transform function to create this equation. You'll put your mean and your standard deviation there, and then the final table. You don't have to create the graphs, but as we can see, all we did is transform the x to the z. And I got that information from just going to the help menu and typing in z-score. Okay, so then once you're finished with this, go ahead and upload this into Blackboard, and that'll complete the assignment. Thank you.